However, in looking at a map of the world demarcated with countries in which totalitarian regimes existed for 7 or 8 decades, it becomes clear that the past century looks more like a period of violence and slavery, and the gallery of political leaders of the era is dominated by portraits of the cruelest and bloodiest rulers. Millions of the faithful, adherents to the world's main religions, offer prayers to the Lord, who is situated beyond the material world. But the largest mass exodus from faith in the Creator of the heavens took place in the 20th century, and human nature is such that having driven out the God spirit from his consciousness, man immediately creates idols for himself. In the most recent history, such idols are rulers worshipped by their peoples like living pagan gods. They strike terror and adulation in the hearts of men. They were offered human sacrifices, and people seek protection and mercy from them. Contemporary tyrants had much in common. Their careers were remarkably similar in terms of consistent patterns. If anything, they differed only in some national traits and outward appearance. Everything else copying of one and the same type in various countries and various historical situations. In the historical perspective, their collective portrait converges into the archetype of the 20th century tyrant. The technology of manufacturing living gods is refined and can be called universal. How is this done? The multitudes of pilgrims that visit houses turned into museums where the great leaders were born are always told to be of the humble conditions in which these leaders lived in childhood. In fact, almost all of them originated in the so-called middle class of society. For example, Mao's parents were prosperous farmers. Hitler's father was a low-level customs official. Stalin was born in the family of a poor bootmaker in the Georgian city of Gori. In their childhood and youth, they did not show any particular aptitude for science or art and did not stand out in any way from their peers other than boundless ambition. Already in their youth, the future overlords became active members of left or right extremist organizations consisting of non-achievers, naive revolutionary romantics, and fringe elements. Only there could they satisfy their lust for power. Cruelty, calculating cynicism, and cunning quickly make them cream of the crop. Extremely radical organizations similar to the German Nazis are operating in many countries, and for the time being, no one takes them seriously. But then the country is gripped by a crisis. Factories close, panic hits the stock markets, inflation runs out of control, and there are millions of unemployed in the country. The streets are full of poverty-stricken and hungry people. Moreover, national pride has been hurt by defeat in war. Then ordinary Germans place their faith in radicals and in their leader, who will restore order and revive the honor of their nation. And even though Hitler came to power through elections, he immediately put an end to all manifestations of democracy. One nation, one Führer. Earlier still, in Italy, the fascists under the Führer's best friend Benito Mussolini came to power as a result of a putsch. In Asia, in distant China, events unfolded in a similar fashion. Horrific poverty, inflation, the back-breaking labor of millions of workers did not afford them a tolerable existence. In these conditions, communist propaganda proved very effective. The war with Japan weakened the government. The government was stricken with corruption and discord. As the result of a bloody civil war, a communist totalitarian regime led by Mao Zedong was installed. In African countries and most Middle Eastern and Latin American countries, dictators came to power after military coups organized by young officers. Russian Bolsheviks were the first to master the method of installing a totalitarian regime of personal power, and they served as an example to the rest. The chain of military defeats for Russia, the collapse of the economy, the weakness of the government, is a familiar pattern. And then, a small, disciplined, and radical organization comes out from the underground. Its ranks steadily grow. The result of the revolution and several years of civil war is the dictatorship of the proletariat. In other words, the party. But there is no dictatorship without a dictator, and the dictator's path is subject to a certain algorithm. Some stray from the path midway, but those who follow it to the end become living gods. Stalin did not become a living god right away. After the death of the leader of the revolution, Lenin, he was still in supporting roles. Gradually, step by step, he started to drive out the competition. A merciless battle for leadership is waged both amongst the leaders of dictatorial regimes and criminal gangs. And the first thing that those who are able to seize the reins of power do is to get rid of their former brothers in arms. Striving for absolute power, tyrants gradually destroy everyone in their circle who resists this even in the smallest way. The great master of intrigues, Stalin orchestrated a series of legal proceedings in which almost all of the leaders of the party and the government were accused of espionage, sabotage, and other improbable crimes and sentenced to be shot. He dealt with the leadership of the army, whose loyalty he doubted, in the same way. 3 out of 5 marshals and 60 out of 67 corps commanders were killed. All 4 fleet commanders in the Navy and all 17 commissars of ranks 1 and 2 were killed. The second in command of the Nazi elite was Ernst Röhm, the commander of the stormtroopers. Hitler saw in him a dangerous rival. At a friendly gathering, Hitler's minions shot Röhm and all of his associates. Simple and effective, just like the films about Chicago gangsters during the times of Al Capone. Mao also got rid of the second in command in the party, Lin Biao, who was officially named the successor of the great helmsman. The peak of Mao's repression against his brothers in arms came in the last years of his rule, during the Cultural Revolution, when almost all of the members of the old leadership were ousted and subject to humiliation and victimization by the mob. But after all, Stalin had no equal in treachery and refined sadism. In order to keep people in his inner circle in fear, he even repressed their family members. Vyacheslav Molotov's wife, Polina Zemchuzina, who was known for her social activism, was arrested and spent several years in prison. 2 of Anastas Mikoyan's sons were sent into exile, and Lazar Kaganovich's brother was shot. The nominal head of the government, Mikhail Kalinin, loved his young wife very much, but he was supposed to love only one person, his chief. Kalinin's wife was sent to a gulag, from which she returned a few days before her husband's funeral. But not every great scoundrel and political opportunist who seizes power can become a living god. For this, you need to have charisma, the ability to hypnotically influence the masses and create an emotive superhuman image. Tyrants are great actors and directors in a devilish performance where the only heroes are they themselves. The most vivid acting star in the political theater was Mussolini. If he didn't get involved in politics, he could have been the pride of the Italian stage. Dictators are generally fiery and temperamental orators, able to manipulate the emotions of the masses. Their language is simple and clear, and its content is as well. Hatred towards enemies, other nations, and other classes, promising a bright future for all who are ready to follow them unquestioningly. They said what people wanted to hear.
Wir werden weiter angreifen und nicht rasten, bis wir das Ziel erreicht haben. Questa era la poesia degli effetti comunisti, al titolo der Haus, Slowenien.
Perhaps the best orator was Hitler, although his speeches are reminiscent of possession by a demon and serve as an argument for the theory that all despots are mentally ill, afflicted by various types of manias.
Und wir können mit Stolz sagen, die Zahl der Erwerbslosen ist rund 1,2 Millionen zurückgegangen.
The image of the dictator calls for an appropriate outward appearance. Dictators understand this and have made incredible, nothing less than theatrical costumes for themselves, which, in their view, imparted the necessary greatness to them. You could assemble a curious collection of dictator clothing patterns. The most inventive fashion designer was Muammar al-Gaddafi, who was simply addicted to clothing changes. The dictator must look solid and courageous in the eyes of the people, and sports are used by some dictators as a means of self-promotion. At a ripe old age, Mao had a swim in the Yangtze River, during which, according to loyal propagandists, he broke all swimming records, and the Chinese believed it. After Mao, Saddam Hussein let a mass swim. Nicolae Ceausescu turned out to be a fantastically successful hunter. Francois Duvalier, the cruel longtime dictator of Haiti, more commonly known as Papa Doc, had his own hobby. He spread voodoo, a mix of Catholicism with a magic cult based on the belief in spirits, reviving the dead and requiring bloody sacrifices, far and wide among the impoverished and hungry populace. Death squads dressed as boogeymen, known as Tantan Makuts, killed all of Papa Doc's enemies. Consequently, the false religion yields not only political dividends for the dictator, but the main thing is that it creates an aura of being chosen and having wisdom, secret knowledge, and mystical powers. More well-known tyrants acted in a similar way. Almost every one of them thought it is his duty to create his own religion and genius theory, enlightening his people and all of humanity on the one true way to attain paradise on earth. Hitler's magnum opus Mein Kampf was printed in parchment, just like the Bible, and should have been preserved for 1,000 years in a special mausoleum like a holy book and a guide to living for future generations. The leader of the Libyan revolution, Muammar al-Gaddafi, fancied himself a prophet. He compared himself to Christ and Muhammad. His magnum opus, the Green Book, was deemed by its author to be equal to the Bible and the Quran, and presents his take on eternal truths and supreme wisdom. Stalin's collection of theoretical writings, which was written by a whole team of ghostwriters, filled several volumes. The luminary of all the sciences expressed the only correct opinion on all issues from agriculture to the art of war, all the way to philosophy and even linguistics. Study of the works of the genius of all peoples was mandatory for the entire population of the country, and some wise pronouncements, such as, if there is a harvest, there will be bread. If there is no harvest, there will be no bread, had to be learned by heart. It is a mystery whether these works of genius were merely an element of play, or the dictators were so ignorant as to seriously think of themselves as great wise men and prophets who had unlocked all of the secrets of the world. The case of Mao Zedong, who also wrote multi-volume works, seems to point to the latter view. Apparently, he assumed the role so well that he imagined himself as possessing the divine gift of omniscience. In any case, no one surpassed Mao in imparting these ideas to the hearts and minds of his subjects. Almost 1 billion adult Chinese carried a booklet of the great helmsman's quotes on their person. Quotes were proclaimed in chorus everywhere, in factories, government institutions, on city streets and squares. In the collective consciousness, living gods are endowed with supernatural powers. People expected miracles from them. Belief in